I can only hope it's not too late. Jim. Yes, Batman, it's me. You lit the signal? Yes, I lit the signal. So you mean? Yes. A crime? A crime. Don't worry, I won't let you down. I know you won't, Batman. Well, I better be off. But I never said thank you. And you'll never have to. And they say I'm crazy. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Today we're taking a look at the DC Multiverse Jim Gordon as Batman. Starting off with the packaging, it's pretty straightforward. Instead of just saying Batman, they did go the extra mile to have it say Jim Gordon as Batman. And then on the side we see this is Jim Gordon as Batman from Batman Endgame. Bum 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 ba bum 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 bum. Excuse me. Who are you? What? I'm Batman. No, I've seen Batman, and you're no Batman. Now you listen here. Do you want my help or not? Why is Jim treating the magician poorly? Down here, for those who want, it's the UPC, and on the back is some pretty straightforward artwork of Jim as Batman. It occurs to me that this logo is probably the precursor to Rebirth. Either way, it gives us a nice frame of reference. For packaging, Jim Gordon gets 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, at the top of his head, Jim stands at just under 7 inches. If this lanky and lithe body shape looks familiar to you, it should. The body belongs to our good friend John Kent. Because of that, there are some extraneous details that shouldn't be there, especially around the ankles. Though revisiting the artwork from the box, it looks like there should be some extra panels and seams, just not, where the figure actually has them. I'm sure it all balances out though. We do have a new diaper, and honestly, it's one of the best. It's really unobtrusive and doesn't break up the sculpt too much. There was a part of me that almost wanted to try to steal it for Nightwing. Unfortunately though, there is a peg hole in there where this belt attaches. As for this holster, it's been very nicely sculpted. The belt rings and clasps look very lifelike, and there's some really good sculpted detail in the pouch. Referring back to the artwork though, and it looks like it should be more of a brown color, but being Batman, I like the yellow. And depending on the artwork you look at, it actually is accurate. Speaking of the yellow, the logo is nice and crisp. Oh, and if you're wondering, that's not a hair, that's some kind of scratch. Speaking of yellow, we do have the police stripes on the shoulder. This brings us to the head. When I first saw this figure, I thought that they reused the Nightfall head. There are similarities, but Jim is not reuse. It's an all-new head, which looks very nice, a little bit more slender than Bruce, and the jaw does feel unique. If I had one gripe, I can't help but wonder if this head isn't slightly large for the body, but something tells me that's going to come in handy during head swaps. As for presentation, I'm giving Jim Gordon Batman 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and even though this is, I think, the 5th time we've looked at this body, it never hurts to check out the range. From the top in Jim's head's on a dumbbell joint, you can look up this high, which is pretty good, and this far down, which is great. Great amount of tilt on this guy, and all the way around. Moving down, he can raise his arms over 90 degrees. Thanks to the rotator cuff, he's all over the place. And then of course he's got his bicep swivel, double jointed elbows with a perfect bend, and wrist balls that can swivel, and depending on how you point them, either hinge up and down, or side to side. Moving to the middle, and Jim has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist. He can arch back this far, which is incredible. So incredible, in fact, that it actually does give you a bit of a gap. And he can hunch forward this far, which for a DC Multiverse is honestly really good. Additionally, he has a great amount of tilt and twist. This strap does get in the way of articulation, but on this side he can kick this high, and on the other side he can kick this high. And then regardless of the straps, he has a great split, a very impressive amount of twist, double jointed knees with a great bend, toe articulation, and ankles that can swivel, hinge, and like Commissioner Gordon flipping the switch of the bat signal to being Batman himself, pivot. This has got to be one of McFarlane Toys' best articulated bucks. So for posability, I'm giving Jim Gordon Batman 1 whole point. Moving on to playability, and there is one good thing about all this reuse: accessories. First of all, a naturally Bat Gordon has a trading card and a figure stand. If you want to know what it says, pause here. You've no doubt noticed the trigger hands he comes preloaded with. That's for his very own Bat grapnel gun. Not quite sure how he fits this whole thing in that holster, but it fits in either one of his hands with no trouble. In terms of hands, he comes with 6 more. This includes a pair of fists, a pair of relaxed hands, and a pair of gesture hands. That includes this pointer, Barbara, pull my finger. And this one for giving the rest of the Batman task force a thumbs up, or down. These hands are also reuse, but very much appreciated. I'm also delighted to see this alternate unmasked head. I'm not just delighted because it's a cool, unique head sculpt of a very specific time in Commissioner Gordon's life, but also because it continues the trend of McFarlane normalizing alternate heads. Hopefully we see more of this, and for all you customizers out there, this could be a great start for Guy Gardner. With so many awesome accessories, it's important to remember that playability is also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with my only other Jim Gordon, and here we have the DC Designer Series Grey Capullo version. I am astonished at how well these go together. Just look at how closely all the lines on the jaws match. As for some of the villains who appeared in Endgame, and here we have the Arkham Asylum Riddler, as well as the classic Riddler. But for Riddler as he appeared in Endgame, and here we have the DC Designer Series Grey Capullo version. This is the one that I most desperately hope McFarlane makes next. McFarlane is yet to make an Endgame Joker, and I don't have the DC Collectibles version, but for your consideration, here we have Rebirth, Mortal Kombat 11, The Three Jokers Clown, and Death of the Family, which started the ball rolling towards Endgame. That said, for a few other notable Endgame villains, and here we have Ra's al Ghul, the Arkham City Penguin, but for a couple of larger scale villains, and here we have Killer Croc, Clayface, and Bane. As for the rest of the Bat family, and here we have the Mattel Alfred. As for Nightwing, and here we have Better Than Batman and Titans. Titans, of course, shares the same body with this Jim Gordon. Next up is DC Essentials and DC Multiverse versions of the Red Hood. As for his daughter Barbara, and here we have New 52 and DC Designer Series Grey Capullo versions of Batgirl. And then we have Art of the Crime Batgirl along with my own Kit Bash combining 3 Jokers with the Batman Family 5-pack. YouTube user RBruce89 asked to see this figure side by side with Nightfall Batman, so here you go. This Batman is the reason why I did this swap to start with. This brings us to Batman himself and just a few that I will not be head swapping with. Here we have the DC Designer Series Capullo, which is way too small, 3 Jokers whose neck joints are incompatible, and Battle Damaged whose neck joints are also incompatible. For a relative scale comparison, here's Bat Jim with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Wait a minute, you're shiny blue armor. I'm not Rookie. This, of course, brings us to head swaps. First up, and here we have Detective Comics 1000. This isn't exactly one of my favorite Batman figures, but this head is a drastic improvement. Other way around, and I can't exactly say the same thing. Next up is the Grim Knight. The Grim Knight was one of the earlier McFarlane Batman figures. As such, this head is definitely an improvement. For our first video game Batman, and here's Arkham Knight, if you wanted to move this body away from the game into more of a comic style, I think this is a great head to go with. The colors and proportions are a great match. This, however, looks a little silly. The head just seems a bit too large and too realistic for this body. For a Batman who also skews a bit on the small side, and here we have DC Rebirth. Truth be told, head swaps don't always work well with this figure, but this one is honestly pretty good. And if you wanted to shorter your Jim Gordon Batman, I think that this is probably your best bet. Next up is my favorite Batman for head swaps, Future's End. As always, this is a winner, and this is really cool. Just imagine army building these as a Batman police force. For another smaller Batman, and here we have Page Punchers. As a more realistic Batman, this head works really well. Just a word of warning, you will need to raise it up just a little bit. Other way around, and I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but I'll let you be the judge. For another video game version, and here's the fan favorite Arkham City. A lot of you like to use this body as a comic Batman, and this head would be a great choice for it. The size and colors are great, and it's very distinct from the Arkham games. If you wanted to use this head for Gordon, I think you actually could. You'll just need to find a longer peg. Moving over to movies, and here's Michael Keaton as he appeared in The Flash. The head feels a little small for this body, but somehow it looks more like Michael Keaton than the head that came with it. It's all in the lips. Other way around, and if you wanted to use this body for Keaton, you could. I'd still recommend getting a better head. Next up is the 1989 Batman from the movie 6-pack. If you wanted to go for some Dark Knight collection vibes, I think this would be a great choice. Again, this feels more like Keaton than the one that came with it. This, however, just looks ridiculous. And then here we have Sinestro Corps. I like this combo because it feels more squarely placed in the comic universe rather than the video game. If you think so too, then give it a shot. On the flip side, I don't like this one as much. That unmistakably Arkham head on this body just feels a little bit out of place. Lastly, and here we have Nightfall. As I said during presentation, these heads are already very similar, but this one has extra lines and details that definitely add a bit of definition. If you like how this one looks, you might want to make your life easier and wait for the black and gray version of Nightfall to release. But Between the head swap potential and the accessories, for playability I'm giving Jim Gordon as Batman 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price.
We also need to discuss why you didn't give me dialogue. People love when I have dialogue.
All this for 20 bucks? What's left to say except that I hope that there's a rookie Megafig in the works to go with him. For price, I'm giving Jim Gordon Batman 1 whole point for a perfect total of 5 out of 5. How did you like Jim Gordon as Batman, and what did you think of Endgame in general? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.